I get so many requests from people asking about sharpening a Spokeshave blade, and the reason is because they're so short, they're awkward on the oil stone or the sharpening plates, and because of the length. Now, I've sharpened them all my life just using my fingers, and I have enough strength in my hands because my hands have been trained for 50 years. I don't have any issue sharpening and getting exactly what I want. But when I have students in my classes, that changes a little bit because they have to sharpen their own Spokeshaves. They may not have the physical strength in their fingertips, and they may slip and slide. So I've used a type of a Spokeshave holder. This one, I just put a piece of sandpaper on either side of the blade, and I slip it into these saw curves here and slide it on here. The problem with that is it's not really locked in there, and I wanted something that could be locked more readily. So I came up with this jig here, and I really love this one. It works perfectly, and I'm going to show you how to make one. It's very simple, but just to get it right off the bat, I'm going to give you all the angles and everything. This one holds uses the lever cap from the Spokeshave, and the two holes here that are for the adjusters I use to locate two pins in the guide, and that helps to register everything exactly where I want it. Very solid with no moving parts. It works great. So let me show you what I've done to get this. First of all, we're going to cut the underside of here. We've got an angle on here. This is 25 degrees. You could vary that. I found that 25 degrees gave me enough meat of the wood in here to take a threaded bolt through the wood, and it gave me enough where the heel of this was away from the plate when I was sharpening. So when I'm on the piece of wood, I'm actually somewhere at this height, and then I'm up here away from the plate as I'm sharpening. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to put an angle of 25 degrees. So I'm setting this to 25. You could go 24, 23, 26, 27. It wouldn't really make much difference. Cinch that. And I'm going to put my angle onto here. You could use a knife. You don't need to because this is a non-critical angles, but I'm just using the black pen so you can see. And I don't know if you can see, but I've left the start of this about just over a 16th, about 2 or 3 mil from the end of my corner here. Can you see that? So, and then square across this side. You don't need a square line on this side particularly because you can cut from this corner here, this corner line here, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use the corner as my guide and just use a tenon saw to cut down this line here. And I'll give you the size of the piece of wood in a minute. I've left this piece of wood a little bit long because I'm going to cut it down to size. Here I'm almost through my wood, so I squeeze here so that this piece of wood is squeezing it against the angle to keep it flat. Add a little bit of friction to stop me just from bursting through. There. So my piece of wood is the width of the iron. So if your iron is varied a little bit, this iron is 2 1/8. So my piece of wood is actually just a fraction over 2 1/8. It's 1/2 inch thick, and the length of this one is 9 1/2, but I'm actually going to be cutting it down to 7 1/2, and that will be my overall length. But I'm going to put a round on here just to make it more comfortable, just like this one here. And that's going to make it more comfortable. Am I going to plane this surface? I could, and I will, but I don't need to. So I set my plane nice and shallow. Just take off a few shavings. Just to get it smooth and square across this shoulder here. So you can see now I've left an area on this corner. It's just for strength really. It's not, it doesn't, you could go all the way to the corner if you wanted to. So this is going to go on here. And now what the distance is from this corner here to the actual holes for the locating pins, like this one here, here and here, is 1 1/4 from the edge of my piece of wood here. So I'm going to go 1 1/4. It's about 32 mil. You could square that line across because it's nice to have these dead square. So you could square the line across, place your plate on here, and what I'm going to suggest is instead of going to the outside of the hole here, come to the inside. So go in the center of this hole here, or this inside edge here. Go in there, and there you've got the exact crosshairs you need for drilling or for starting the hole. I'm going to use a square awl, which I always do. So this goes on here. This gives me a conical hole that receives the screw shank. Like that. I'm just going to pare this down where the edge of the reamer just pared that up. I'll raise that grade. A couple of screws. I've just got a couple of brass screws, and they're fine. They're strong enough. They will do what you want them to do. One of the nice things about the brass is they're easy to cut in a minute. So we're going to cut the head off these once we've got these seated. That's going to break that one. So what we do, we're going to back that one out. We have to go a little bit deeper with the reamed hole here. This is mahogany, by the way. I chose the mahogany in this case. I used oak on the other one, but I felt like the mahogany would receive the thread a little bit better. It's a bit more resistant. And we're going to be threading this in a minute for the main bolt in the middle. So I'm going to go to that depth. I don't need to go any deeper. These are 1/2 inch number 4 screws. And you could use steel. I was choosing this just because I've got to hacksaw these off in a minute. So I'm going to hacksaw the heads off. Sorry you can't see this. And then just file that down just to clean up the work. And that's going to be the locator for these here. So now in the middle of this, now we've got this located here in the center. Just mark the middle, and then somewhere I would go more towards the top than the middle here. I would go more towards the top, make your crosshair, and this time we're going to drill a hole square through there. Try and keep your wood level so you're coordinating the drill. I want to show you about the thread on the bolt in here, just to give you a better understanding. In case you're not mechanical, you've never done anything like this before, when you're threading a piece of steel or a piece of wood, it's the same. You drill a hole. Now this hole represents the main shank of the screw, but not the thread. So when I put my screw into this, my bolt into this, I'm actually threading the walls of these holes like this. So the thread, the side of the screw, is actually threading the hole, and that gives me the equivalent of tapping the inside of that hole. So now I need the drill bit. So I've already chosen my drill bit. My bolt is 3/16, and my drill bit is just over 1/8. And so you can experiment with this with a piece of wood first, like I did. Just drill your hole. Now one of the downside, you want to make sure you drill the hole so it doesn't have too much breakout on the reverse side. Now I didn't get any breakout on this because I know it was sapele, but if I was using oak, I might put a backer board on here and drill through one into the other, and that would work fine. Here's what I found works. You could just take this, put this on the start of the hole and turn it like this. I find it a little awkward to hold the screw and the screwdriver and thread the hole. This is working fine right now, so I could just do that if you don't have what I'm going to show you here now. Now I'm going to take the drill out of here and lock the head on there, and I'm just going to turn it gently and thread the hole. So now I'm down. I've got that threaded. And this now, I think, we'll take this and this, hopefully. So I need to back out just a hair here. There. And that is my adjustment here. So I can lock this now. You can see how this works. This is past the edge of my piece of wood. So now all I need to do is press this down so it's locked onto those two pieces. Now here's where you may have to consider this area here. I think this is missing my piece of wood, so I'm clear to go straight onto the stones. But if you find this is catching, just back your thread out here and just take a couple of shavings off here until you're protruding past this end. In this case, we are good to go. And you can see this assembly, how this works. It's neat and it works. The one thing I want to do now is get the length right, because this is the reason I like this. I did have one or two here. I've had these shorter ones, and even the one I was using was short, but I found that I had much better control when I had this at this length. I found it was similar to the plain iron length, so it works great to make it that length. So what I did, you take these off. I just made this 7.5 inches long, which is what this piece that I've already cut is. And then just take a can or something. This is just a bean can, a coffee cup. Draw an arc on here, and you could definitely, let me see if I can get this, where you could just use a coping saw to cut the bulk of this round. So this is a comfort thing, really. And then a rasp or a file just to clean out the rough marks. And then these corners are quite hard on here, so on this one I took them off here with the rasp, and on the underside Took a little bit off the underside there. So I'm just going to take a little bit off here just to soften that inside edge. Same on this one. And then you can soften it even more with sandpaper if you want to. I find this edge is fine, I'm not worried about that. One thing you might want to do, which is something I think I preferred, was just take off this corner at an angle here. The angle isn't really critical, just down to here. So you've got a bevel on this edge, can you see that? So I've got a slight bevel on this edge. And I'll show you on this other edge in a second. Do the same on this edge here. So instead of playing square, just tilt your plane over till you get to this corner. And that gives me an angle on the side. And as I said, the angle isn't critical, but if you want an angle that's critical, I can give you one. So that's 10 degrees. Can you see there? So I've got a 10-degree angle on that side. What do I have on this side? I've got a 10-degree angle on that side. So, and the reason I'm suggesting that you might want to do that is because up until now, you can't put one of these in here because you can't get the extension long enough in here to hold this and put it on the stone because the angle will be too steep. So what this does is it gives you this added ability to lock this in, and it works perfectly for honing. If you prefer to use a honing guide, this will give you exactly what you need. And then you simply adjust this backwards or forwards to get the exact angle you want for the 30 degrees, and that will give you something you can hone on your oil stones or on your bench. If your stone is on the bench, you can actually set this on the bench at the back and move it forward and use pretty much the whole length of the stone if you want to. So that works perfectly. So we'll go to the stones now and we'll sharpen this blade. So I've been using my honing guide with the new holder for the Spokeshave, and I've got my bevel established. I've been actually setting this at 25 degrees, so what I did, just to show you, I just put marks here for the 25 degree bevel. If you want to sharpen at 25 degrees, that's fine, and if you want a micro bevel on it, or a secondary bevel, that's fine too. I usually don't go for the micro bevel, but I do often go for a secondary bevel, especially with a Spokeshave. I find that, especially with students, that they often leave the heel too far down. And in other words, they have the guide on here, they keep lifting, 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 and they get too thick an edge, what we call a thick edge on there. The honing guide guarantees that you stay at 25 degrees or 30 degrees. You could set this to 30 degrees. I just drew my angle on here to establish my bevel, put this on the piece of wood, and then took the bevel, the angle finder on here, and I set this to the underside. Actually did it this way, and then I just sight the edge along here and here to get the exact bevel I wanted initially. Now if I want to put a secondary bevel on, I don't care about whether it's 27, 28, 29 degrees. I just would move this along about maybe 3/16, and then I go onto the stone again and I push a few times until I take a look at my bevel to see how wide that secondary bevel is. I'm going to do a little bit more because I would want it fairly thick. I wouldn't want a thin, what people are calling a micro bevel. I find that they don't last long enough. I want something a bit more beefy. So now I have two bevels on here. and then I go to my next stone. So this is my core stone, 250. Then I go to anywhere, this stone could be 400 to 600, and polish the bevel that I just did. Then I go to my super fine here, 1200. And this will start to polish now. This will be very much more polished. It's quite wide as well. It's surprising how quickly and how wide it goes. Generally, I might, if I was going to use this guide, I would probably generally stay at 30 degrees and just do everything to 30 degrees. I wouldn't bother with that. If I was finishing this off now, I would just go to a strop, which is just a piece of 3 by 10 plywood with leather glued to the surface. Double-sided tape works fine. And you can charge that with buffing compound, a steel or stainless steel buffing compound like this. And this is the nice thing about this. You know, you can imagine when you have a short piece of steel like this and you're trying to hone it on there, and I'm going to show that method in a minute, but if you were trying to hone this on here, you would have a lot of strength in your fingers. It would be very difficult to hold, and it's the same on here. Stropping this on here takes a tremendous amount of pressure on your fingers and your hands, and if you're not used to that pressure, it can be very difficult to get the edge polished. Using this guide that I've designed here gives me tons and tons of leverage here. The heel of my hand is right on the top of the iron. I have plenty of length here, so I'm maintaining this at the 30 degrees. It's not critical. I'm not trying to rock this because I don't want to put too much of a camber near the cutting edge, because that tends to defeat what we want. And I usually pull this about 30 times to get the bevel super polished like this. And then we can take this off. Well, you can see it now even. Careful here. Now we've got a beautiful polished bevel on here. And that gives us an iron that's ready to go. Normally you polish out this inner face here on this side. This has already been flattened and it would be polished. And you can pull this on here just a couple of times if you feel like the burr didn't come off. Now this is super sharp. Let me polish this out. Can you see what we have on there? And that's a sharp edge. Now then, if you wanted to freehand this, it's very similar. It's the same steps, but let me do the whole process for you, just to show you. I do this because it gives me the freedom. It's very fast. So I'm just going to go through this without really talking much, just to show you what I do when I'm sharpening. I go on here. I start at 30 degrees and I push forward, which automatically gets me to a gap on this leading edge here. So as I start at 30, I push forward and it takes off the heel on the back of here at the same time. So I sharpen here like this. Then I go to this one, exactly the same, because I don't have to do much because we've already established this bevel. Then I go to this one and polish out the whole of the bevel. And this is the method that I would suggest that you get used to, because this puts more camber on the edge. We've got a nice long camber, so we're going from 30 and we're dropping the heel away to maybe somewhere around 20, which takes the heel out of the way. And on a spoke shave, that's critical because the heel often has contact. The more it protrudes through the mouth, the more the heel will hit the wood first, and you don't want that. So you have to maintain this bevel no more, I would say, than ever 30 degrees. So here, same again, just polish this out. And now I've got the same thing that I had before, but you can see this is more of a continuous camber right on the edge. And that's how I maintain my Spokeshave iron. So we can locate this into the Spokeshave now. Now this, I'm going to tell you, I've got two Spokeshaves here. One is a round bottom Spokeshave, the other is a flat bottom Spokeshave, and it's exactly the same for both irons. So I can put this iron in here or into here, and both will work fine. This one has adjusters, so when I drop this in here, it hits on these two adjustment depth adjusters here. Now I'm putting a record Spokeshave iron into a Stanley Spokeshave. They're interchangeable, so that's nice. And there's my Spokeshave iron locked in and ready to go. Now there's going to be a question may come up, what happens if you have a hock iron? What happens if you have an iron that's non-standard? And the same system works for a hock iron. I've tried it with a hock iron. Here's where you might come into difficulty, not so much with the hock iron, but with the another iron, say an iron that's really, really worn. So here's your hock iron. It's just a bit thicker, but it still registers in the in here just fine. And you don't need, you can use any of these here to lock them in place. So that works fine for this one. When you get the real problem is going to be when you have a short iron. So here's a short iron compared to a full size iron. It's quite a bit shorter, and that's when you get a problem. That's when, if you try to locate this in here, you can see we don't even go past the end of the guide. So you're going to have to move your pins further down and make some micro adjustments. This one is almost past its usage, because it's really got no iron left compared to a full size one like this one. So you can see there quite a big difference there. It's 3/8 of an inch, 10 millimeters difference. Another one you might have a problem with is this one. This is the old model Spokeshave. So what I did with this one, this is the one here that was in here. This is the number 51. These are the 151. And this one didn't have any adjustment screws on here, so I couldn't locate that. But what I did is I just drilled a couple of holes here, 1/8 holes, and I made a separate holder just for this one, but this works fine. So whichever one of these you go in, so just drill a couple of holes in here. That will get you around your problem. Or you could just put 2 pins back here and slide it up to it. It wouldn't have to be in the holes, but it does stop it from slewing around and shifting while you're honing. So I think that's it. We just have come up with some ideas there that will help you get around the pain of sharpening Spokeshaves with short reach, and you've got this long stem here you can rely on now for the rest of your Spokeshave sharpening days.